Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Arthur Ridley, and today we're going to be ranking every single college major based on how good it is for a lazy student. So for those who aren't familiar with my channel, I used to be a really terrible student, and through a lot of hard work, I became a really good student. I ended up graduating summa cum laude despite a really rocky start to college, and I'm now pursuing a master's degree. At this point, I've almost developed a little bit of an obsession with academia, and I've done an embarrassing amount of research into all of the different college majors and the kind of jobs that they lead to and their earning potential and things of that nature, so you do not have to. But I do need to note that this is only my opinion. So if there's anything you disagree with in the comments, this channel is a safe space. Feel free to go down there, call me an idiot, or if you want to just offer some, intelligent thoughts, insightful conversations down there, please, by all means, I am more than welcome to it. If you do enjoy the video, please leave a like, remember to subscribe, all of that jazz. I'm not gonna keep y'all waiting any longer. Let's get right into the list. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 wonderfully organized tiers here, ranging from S all the way down to F. At S tier, we have the academic cheat code tier. You can be a 2.0 GPA frat dude, and you're gonna find some success in these majors. A tier, these are gonna be your really solid majors, maybe not for everybody, but typically you get a good return on investment and they're not too difficult. B tier is decent, as the name implies. It's cool, it's not gonna be my first recommendation, but I'm not gonna hate you if you do decide to go into these majors. C, I guess, bro, shit's mid. These are going to be your majors that you can kind of get away with, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend. D tier, you're cooked. Probably don't go for these. And F tier, just let it go, bro. It's over. So we're going to hop right into a good one. As you can see, we have a couple different majors here, all categorized by their individual schools and kind of their field of study. So we're gonna hop into a big one at first. And this one's gonna be like a little bit of a conglomerate because I feel the same way about pretty much every major that falls under this category. We're gonna have any of the arts. And we're gonna start off strong. I gotta put you in F tier. So, believe it or not, I'm actually not of the opinion that useless degrees are entirely useless. And I think in a lot of instances they are kind of overhated. But I do believe it takes a particularly hardworking, smart person to stand out in these kind of fields that don't have a huge return on investment straight out of grad school, or straight out of undergraduate school rather. Art majors across the board are among some of the lowest earners, but it does, I kind of could see an argument for it going up just based off the fact you're going to earn a degree doing something you love most likely, and 2, you are taking extremely easy classes. It's a huge advantage for lazy students just trying to complete a degree to go into one of the arts, because at the end of the day, it is very simple and you're most likely going to be able to graduate with a very high GPA in something, but there's just so much stronger options. And in general, I really can't recommend anybody, especially a lazy person, go into the arts. I'm of the belief that the only time you should be majoring in your hobby is if you want to teach it, which if you're a lazy student, probably not going to get in that PhD. Now, next we have the business majors, which I'm sure you can predict I'm going to be a fan of in general. Accounting for me is going to get an A tier. Now, just in my general opinion, I think accounting is one of the best majors for anybody, not just lazy students, not just really good students. I think accounting gives you a ton of flexibility. It earns a lot of money, and there's a ton of openings out there. I'm not really a big believer in the whole AI argument, and I think people are in businesses are going to need accountants regardless. So yeah, I really like accounting. The only reason I wouldn't put it in S tier is because among the business majors, it probably is the most difficult. It requires a lot of attention to detail, but if you kind of have the accounting brain and it's something that clicks for you, I couldn't recommend it more, and I could even see an argument going into S tier. Next, we're gonna have business administration. It's decent. I like business administration. It holds a very special place in my heart because business admin was my minor. And I did choose it because I knew it was going to be easy. Initially, I was an accounting minor, and I switched over because I thought business admin would be easier, which it was. It's very easy. It's very solid. There's a reason business majors have the
the kind of reputation that they do. Everybody says that they go in class and they just, do coloring books and stuff like that. And, from my personal experience, that was the case. I can't say for everybody, but yeah. With business admin, it's B tier because you're not going to be earning the most out of college, but it should get you a decent administrative job somewhere, and I think it's pretty perfect for the low achievers. Not to say you're a low achiever if you go get a business admin degree. I'm just saying if you are a lazy student, it's a really nice, simple degree that will most likely make you employable in some regard. Hey, and if you are a high achiever, go out there, get that MBA. You're going to be making bands. Next, we have marketing. I'm going to skip finance for now, and I'll go back. Marketing, I'm going to throw in B tier right next to business admin. I think marketing is pretty good, but it is one of those things that's hard to learn in school, if that makes sense, where I feel like your marketing classes are going to be pretty simple and probably pretty interesting, but it's hard to teach somebody in school to be a good marketer. I do think it's one of the easier business majors, but in my opinion, it's not so much easier that the drop off in earnings compared to something like accounting makes it worth it or justifies it as a major choice. If you are really into it though, and you like the idea of working in marketing, I would say that it's a fairly decent major. The only thing I would advise you against is that the underemployment rate for marketing is fairly high. So it wouldn't be my first choice, but I think it's quite decent overall. Next, we are gonna go into finance. So this is gonna be our first S tier. I've said this a couple times about the business majors, but there is a reason finance bros have the reputations that they do. I think the effort to earning potential for finance is one of the most insane trade-offs for any of the majors out there. I do think in terms of the business majors, finance is more on the difficult side, but that's really just because it introduces a lot of mathematical concepts that aren't seen in other majors. And really those concepts are going to be in their simplest form. So most likely the hardest classes that you're going to have to take as a finance major, at least in your first 2 years, are probably going to be like some basic statistics classes, maybe a business stats class, maybe a calculus course if you're taking a particularly quantitative program. But yeah, look, pretty much any basic research on finance majors will tell you that you only need to do a couple things to succeed with this major. You need to learn Excel, you show up to class every now and then, and network with your frat bros a little bit. And I really think you'll be fine. The statistics on finance are great. They earn a lot of money. It's an easy degree. Typically, they don't go back to grad school unless they're getting an MBA. If you're a lazy student, I could not recommend finance more. Okay, moving on to MIS. And this is another one that I really like. I wasn't really sure where to rank this one. I was between B and A, and I think I'm gonna slot it in an A tier. So if you don't know what MIS is kind of the crossroads between business and like computer science, but it's not nearly as applied or difficult as a computer science major. I think it is among the harder business degrees, and you can achieve a lot of the jobs that you'll get in MIS with other degrees, so it kind of makes it a tricky one to rank. But with that being said, I do think it is a very solid degree, and I would still recommend it because it's not going to keep you up at night like something like computer science or something like CIS. And you do have great job opportunities. You have a lot of access. Businesses are looking for these kind of type of analytical roles. People who do have basic coding skills can work their way through SQL, Excel, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but yeah, in general, I do rate MIS quite highly, and I think it's a great major. Next, we have entrepreneurship. It's going to be F on principle. Now, I will say, the 2 entrepreneurship classes that I took in college were some of, if not the easiest classes that I ever took throughout my undergraduate career, but on principle, I can't tell you to go out and get an entrepreneurship degree if you're a lazy person. It doesn't coincide. They're the antithesis of each other. So And also, in general, it's just not a great degree. You know, you don't earn a huge return on investment. You don't really get any employable skills. In my opinion, that might be a hot take, but in general, a quick Google search will tell you that out of all the business majors, it's probably the least practical for actually going out and like finding an office job somewhere. So, entrepreneurship, I'm gonna have to throw that in F. All right, we got through the businesses. Now, once again, this is going to be one where we're encapsulating kind of a large umbrella of majors under one label. And that's because I kind of feel the same way about all of them, where if you're lazy, you shouldn't do engineering. Now, with that being said, you're probably wondering why it's not F tier, if I absolutely cannot recommend it to anybody that's kind of not set up to be a quality student. And that's because if you can trudge your way through an engineering degree with like kind of the C's get degrees mentality, I think it will pay dividends. I think these are the best majors out there. I think if you can get any type of engineering, you are extremely employable in a variety of fields. But just don't do it. The burnout is going to be horrible. And like, I've literally had friends, my roommate, in fact, he was an engineering student, hated his first couple years of college, and he just could not force his way to get through it. He ended up switching to economics, loves his major now because the downgrade in effort was just so much, and it really helped to like relieve his burnout and stuff like that. So maybe I'm using too much anecdotal evidence, but kind of the opposite of the business majors. There's a reason why engineers have the reputation that they do. I can't recommend it for a lazy student. Please don't do it. Next, we have kind of one that doesn't fit anywhere, but we have education, and I'm going to slot this into C tier. Education is kind of a weird one, but I think it is surprisingly pretty solid and an underappreciated major. Now, I think it's good for lazy students because your classes are going to be super easy, and also you are almost guaranteed a job right out of undergraduate. So if you get the degree, you're going to be able to get a teaching job unless you really, really suck. The only reason I wouldn't put it higher is because they don't make that much money. But hopefully that's changing. I know in my state and in my city, I live in Houston, Texas. I believe wages are going up for teachers across the board here. Also, I think a facet of education that people don't or people fail to consider is that you do have a little bit of upwards mobility going into like administration. You know, if you do find kind of that you love working in education, a lot of teachers end up going into administration, making a little bit more money as like a principal or something like that. It's not the easiest path in the world, but it's definitely something. And overall, I think education is more solid than people give it credit for, but with the low earnings, it's not going to be my first recommendation. On the other hand, we have construction management. Now, this is another interesting one, and this is one I don't have the most experience in, but all of the research say that it's an amazing major. Also, I do have a buddy who's doing it, which kind of helps to have like the anecdotal evidence, but I have a buddy who's doing it, absolutely loves what he's learning. So, research shows that the numbers here are great. According to some of the data that I got from the Fed, earnings and unemployment stats for construction management are comparable and even better than some of the engineerings. Most people report that the major specific classes that they end up taking are fairly easy, especially compared to similar majors like engineering or architecture. You're not going to be even close to the same level as something like, I don't know, mechanical engineering or even civil engineering. And then another thing people fail to consider about construction management is that internships are plentiful. Now, I know if you're a college student right now or a recent grad, you know the job market out there is rough. So studying something where there's actually a demand for you and there's a lot of availability for early career growth, I think is extremely good, especially if you're, you know, kind of on the lazier side. So the only reason it's not S is just that lack of flexibility. But if construction management is your thing for whatever reason and you want to be the guy with the clipboard bossing everybody else around, I would absolutely encourage you to go into this major. Next, though, we have architecture, which some people would compare. But I think I have to put architecture probably in the D tier. I don't think there's too much to say about this one. Architecture is one of those majors that has really long hours. You're going to be completing a lot of really difficult projects. It's a very competitive field. A lot of people want to work here in very limited roles. And honestly, compared to some of the other majors, you don't even make that much money. So for me, architecture is a pretty easy one. I think you're kind of cooked if you're a lazy guy in architecture. But hey, if you really like it and that's your thing, I could see an argument for it. Now, next we're gonna have nursing, and this one might be kind of a controversial placement, especially considering the gimmick of the tier list is like the laziness aspect. But I'm gonna put nursing in B tier because I think it's decent. So I think nursing is kind of the major for lazy students that aren't necessarily lazy people, if that makes sense. So if you're the type of person where you can get out and you can punch that clock, but you just don't really have the capabilities of being the best student, I think nursing is a fantastic major. The classes, while they are difficult, and they're probably more difficult than anything in the tiers above it, like I think nursing is just objectively more difficult than something like finance. But with that being said, they're not nearly as hard as the traditional medical routes. The time requirements and the clinical hours are pretty insane. So that is the one thing I would warn you about, where if you're just not a driven person in any type of regard, stay away from nursing. But there is a huge demand. The employment numbers are great, and you're not going to have to look very hard to find a job. So compared to some of the other majors on here, it is a lot of work, but it's certainly more attainable and worthwhile than something like a biology degree, which we will get into later, and I do have plenty of thoughts on. All right, next. Liberal arts and social sciences. Definitely a controversial one. So, I only have a couple. Like I said in the intro, I couldn't cover everything, but I think the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, at least at my school, is one of the most comprehensive schools with so many majors under their belt. So I could only pick so many, but I think we'll most likely be able to cover pretty much everything, I hope. First, though, is psychology, one of the most popular majors, if not the most popular major. I want to put it C. My heart's telling me C. My brain is telling me D. Pause. So, I have a little bit of bias here with psychology because my girlfriend was a psychology student. So I'm very familiar with the programs. And if she's watching this, she's probably going to be pretty mad at me. But then again, there's a good chance she'll agree with a lot of the things I have to say and kind of the critiques I have towards psychology. I think your main benefit of taking psychology is your classes are easy and they are very interesting. The reason psychology is so popular is because it draws a lot of people there. But the downside of having a very interesting subject that a lot of people want to study is that now you have a lot of competition for a very limited amount of roles. I think that's kind of the hidden challenge of psychology, where at the undergraduate level, so many people are studying it, but there really isn't that many careers you can go into without a master's or a PhD. You could work as something like a behavioral tech or like maybe like a social worker or something like that. But in general, these roles really don't pay a whole lot. And if you want to do something worthwhile with your major, you're going to have to go back to grad school, which, I'm sure if you're a lazy guy, you're probably not trying to do that. So yeah, psychology, as much as I like it, I can't really recommend it. Next, we're going to have the humanities. So on my notes here, I have a couple of different majors that we're covering with the label of humanities because there's just so many. So I pretty much have the same thoughts on like all of these. So I'm just going to list a few of the ones that are most relevant and that fall under the umbrella of humanities, that being history, English, philosophy, linguistics, religious studies, and any type of race or culture studies. So, your LGBTQ studies, your Chicano studies, all of that is going to fall under the umbrella of humanities. And most likely, to nobody's surprise, I'm going to have to throw it in F tier. So like I mentioned with the arts, I am not a person who hates quote unquote useless degrees, but I also don't think that they're for the meek. And that's because you don't earn any money. At the bachelor's level, you are not going to earn anything graduating with a humanities degree because you don't have any employable skills. And so the people that are going to succeed in the humanities are going to be the most driven and the smartest people in the room. The people that go on and get their PhD in something like gender studies, and, you know, their entire identity is like their dissertation and their research and what they're studying. So if that doesn't sound like you, stay far, far, far away from the humanities. Anything with studies in the name, you should probably stay away from. Next, we have kinesiology. Now, this is another weird one, and one that I'm not too familiar with. Just based on my research, I'm probably going to give it a C. I think it could be B. It seems decent. In terms of employability and earnings, it looks like a pretty average degree. It's not terribly difficult. And actually, other than the entrepreneurship classes that I mentioned earlier, the easiest class that I took in college was a kinesiology class. So I'm sure it gets more difficult a little bit later on in the degree, but you do have that going for you. Honestly, I don't really know what else to say here other than I don't hate it. But if you're going to go into kinesiology, you should probably do a little bit more research into it. This one, on the other hand, is very easy. Journalism. Literally, like, there's nothing to say here. We should just go next. I'm pretty sure I saw a stat one time in one of my labor economics classes that, like, there is more people studying journalism in the US than there are journalism jobs, like, in the entire world. I probably butchered that stat. Please feel free to correct me in the comments. Regardless, the point remains, nobody's gonna hire you. It's just not a good degree. And that leads us to my pride and joy, my personal degree that I have a Bachelor's of Science in, and I am currently getting my Master's for. We have economics, and I'm gonna have to throw this in F tier. No, I'm just playing. I'm gonna put it in an A tier. For this one, I'm gonna try to put my bias aside because I do love economics, and I think it opens so many doors and so many opportunities. And frankly, I think it's a fascinating subject, but I know not everybody is gonna share my passion for economics. Objectively speaking, you have extremely high earning potential, but that could be more of a correlation thing than a causation thing because a lot of rich people just happen to study economics, a lot of business owners and politicians, things of that nature. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking at ROI numbers or median earning numbers. I think it's fine at the undergraduate level because of flexibility, but if you want to be an economist, you're going to need to further your education. Not everybody who goes into econ gets a graduate degree, but a good portion do. And in order to do that, you're going to have to really knuckle down, take a lot of advanced maths, a lot of statistics class, stuff you don't want to do if you're a lazy student. Now, that's pretty much the only thing keeping it from S tier, in my opinion. I think my classes in general were challenging, but not in the same way that harder majors are. And I'm of the opinion that econ is like the hardest easy major, or maybe it's the easiest hard major. It's one of those. I wouldn't recommend economics if like numbers are something you struggle with and you really can't wrap your head around it. But I also don't think that you should be scared of economics if you're not a particularly good math student, because everything in econ is, I feel like it's very learnable. You know, it's not something like engineering where you're just cooked from the beginning. So yeah, I love econ. Go study economics. It's wonderful. Next, we have econ's redheaded stepchild, at least in my opinion, and that's Poli Sci. Now, out of all of the liberal arts and social sciences, I actually do respect Poli Sci, and I think it opens a lot of doors, but there's just, it runs into a similar problem that psychology does, where a lot of people are studying Poli Sci. And I think it's a fine major, but it's not as valuable as some of the other majors that open similar doors. Econ. But yeah, your early career earnings aren't going to be great. Poli Sci has a very high underemployment rate, sitting at right under 50%. And a lot of people that end up getting Poli Sci degrees end up going back for their graduate degrees. So in general, I think I've harped on a lot of the negatives here. It does open a lot of doors, and your classes are going to be, 1, interesting, 2, pretty easy. So I think it does have that going for it. Among the social sciences, I think it's a stronger choice if that's something you want to study. So I think it slots nicely in C. But full bias. If you're interested in political science or like being like a policy analyst or something like that, take a look at econ because I think it's a little bit safer in terms of ROI and being able to get a job straight out of your undergraduate studies. But I don't hate Poli Sci. I think it's a very fair major. What's not a fair major is sociology, which is going to slot in right at the D tier, and not at the top of the D tier. I don't hate sociology, but I'm gonna probably put it at the bottom of the D tier because I think it struggles with a lot of the same stuff as some of the other social sciences, but worse. The underemployment rate is really not great for sociology, and it doesn't offer the same flexibility as something like psychology if you did want to go back to school. So, like, this is one that I don't have a whole lot to say about either, but there's just better choices out there, and it's not a very high ROI degree. I would recommend looking at something else personally. Next, and lastly, arguably the most important category, we have the sciences and the maths. Now, this is a big one here. I'm gonna put biology in F tier. I hate biology. I cannot think of a worse degree for underachievers than biology. Now, once again, this list is strictly at the undergraduate level, but if you're lazy, you're probably not interested in med school. So I just can't understand why you would ever want to take a biology degree. Like most of the sciences, biology has very low earnings compared to the effort that you need to put in, and most of the jobs you're looking at the undergraduate level are extremely bleak. They don't pay a lot, they are hyper competitive, and most of them gear you up for some type of higher education. If you are not a tried and true like Big Bang Theory scientist, like Sheldon Cooper level Jotaro Kujo marine biologist, like, please do not go into biology. I could not warn you more. I really don't like this major at all, and I think it's arguably the worst major for lazy students on the entire list. In a similar facet, we have chemistry, which also falls nicely into the F tier, but I will say I don't hate it as much as I hate biology. It's slightly better, but still not great for the categorizations that we've had thus far. Now look, bro, I'm gonna tell it how it is. You're not gonna be the next Walter White. Especially if you're like a chud that like can't even bother going to classes. Like chemistry is a major for extremely academic minded people. And even then, it's hard for me to recommend somebody to go into chemistry just because I feel like you put yourself through hell to get a STEM degree, so you might as well do something that's actually practical in the real world where you can get a job that's outside of a laboratory. That's just my personal opinion. I'm sure there's some chemistry heads out there that love chemistry and they are so passionate about it. But if I was talking to like a senior in high school that doesn't know what they want to do and they're kind of interested in chemistry, I would point them in so many other directions, especially in terms of getting a STEM degree. I just don't think the effort is worth it. Also, kind of in a similar vein, we have physics, which I'm going to throw in the D tier. I like it more than I like chemistry and biology because I feel like you're more employable outside of a research setting. To me, it's kind of the in-between of engineering and some of the other sciences where you're going to make a lot more money and you're going to be much more employable with a physics degree compared to some of the other sciences, but you're still going to be in hell. And to become an actual physicist, you're going to need that graduate degree. So, frankly, I don't recommend it, but I think it's better than the other ones if you are hard stuck on studying a science. Next, we have mathematics, which in general, I'm a very big fan of. I actually think statistics is one of the best majors out there, period. But for the sake of our list here, if you're lazy, you do not need to be studying math. Math is considered pure math specifically, is considered one of the hardest majors, and it's extremely theoretical. So I'm sure we're noticing a kind of a trend here with a lot of the STEM majors where you're going to get burnt out. And even with something like math where the return on investment is typically worth it, you just have better options as like not the highest achieving or most academically minded student, where like they make decent money and you have a lot of career outcomes, but it just takes a special type of person to get a math degree, I feel like. And if you're kind of on the fence, I would really recommend you look elsewhere unless, like the others, you're super into math for whatever reason. I don't think there's a whole lot else to say here. Whew. And then there was one, computer science. No, I'm just playing. Computer science is terrible. It's actually not terrible, but for lazy students, it is terrible. So, computer science is one of the most controversial degrees, I feel like. It's something you always see in the news about like comp sci students not able to find jobs, not able to find internships, highly competitive field. And I think kind of what happened with comp sci is that in like the mid 2010s, a lot of people were told that you got to get onto technology, you got to get onto coding. Comp sci is like the next big thing. It's going to make you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so a lot of people that weren't initially attracted to technology got into it and they started studying it because they told, it was the damn golden chicken that laid the golden egg or some shit like that. So a lot of people started studying comp sci. As an econ major, that drove the supply way up. And then as AI came along and comp sci started, a lot of the entry-level comp sci roles started getting automated, or at least companies think they can automate it, the demand went way down. So we have more comp sci students enrolling in computer science than ever, with more underachievers in the group than ever before, in a very difficult, arduous major. And right now, the future of computer science is just very questionable. It's very up in the air. Nobody knows how AI is going to affect this thing. And so if you can't differentiate yourself from Claude, you're going to be useless. I feel like computer science is still a fantastic major for people who love computer science and love coding. But if you're just going to school for your piece of paper and you want a degree and you want a high-paying job, I don't think computer science is like the golden goose that it used to be. Instead, if you are interested in technology, I'd really encourage you to look at something like MIS that might be a little bit more your speed. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, because like I said, I was not a great student. That's why I feel like I can talk about this, because if I was at the level I was at when I first entered college and I went into a computer science degree, I would hate my life. It would be awful. I could not imagine the burnout, and I could not imagine the fear of not being able to find a job. So yeah, I feel like I've ragged on to computer science for enough, but in general, I just can't recommend it, especially if you're a lazy student. I think it's too risky, and I think the job market is really only getting worse for it. So yeah, of course, that is only my opinion, and you can tell me how stupid I am in the comments and how computer science is still the greatest major in the world, and finance is terrible and all this. This is just my opinion.
That is going to do it for our tier list. I hope that was enjoyable for y'all. Sorry if I insulted your major and you don't like that. Like I said multiple times, feel free to tell me all about it in the comments if I ended up saying something wrong or something you didn't quite agree with, or if I said something that you really agreed with. I'd love to hear about that too. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace. Also, I really hope that I don't get in trouble. I kind of just realized I needed to record an intro, so I kind of just stole a classroom. I hope that's not like against UH policy, but fuck it.